back in the year 2004, something took place in the Ukraine called the Orange Revolution. If you think political campaigns here in the United States get nasty, then consider what happened to Viktor Yushchenko, a candidate who dared to run for president against the corrupt political party that held all the power in the Ukraine. Partway into the campaign, Yushchenko was the victim of dioxin poisoning, which undoubtedly was inflicted on him by his opponents. But even though that poisoning left his face permanently disfigured and his body weakened, he decided to go against the advice of his doctors, and he stayed in the race. Well, on the election day, the exit polls showed him as the clear winner, with a decisive 10 percentage point lead over his opponents. But since his opponents were the one who had all the power in the Ukraine, and they didn't want to give it up, they devised this plan to tell a lie. What they did was they ordered the state-run television station to make this announcement. The reporter said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we announce that the challenger, Viktor Yushchenko, has been decisively defeated." And the authorities figured that with that announcement, with that lie, that would be the end of it. But what the powers that be failed to take into account was that on Ukrainian television, in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, is a sign language interpreter for deaf people. And so, while on the larger part of the screen, the newscaster was telling the lie that Yushchenko had lost, the sign language interpreter was communicating a different message. This was the message that she communicated. "I am addressing all the deaf people in the Ukraine. Don't believe what the authorities are telling you. They are telling you a lie, and I am ashamed to translate their lies. Yushchenko is our president." No one at the television station at the time realized what the sign language interpreter was doing. But deaf people all across the country, emboldened by what that translator did, launched what would become known as the Orange Revolution. Deaf people started text messaging their friends on their cell phones, telling them about the lie that was being spoken on the news. And pretty soon, newspaper reporters and other journalists learned about the lie and began to report about the lie that was being spread. Over the next few weeks, more than 1 million people, all dressed in orange, poured into the capital city of Kiev, protesting what had happened and demanding new elections. And when the government finally buckled under the pressure and consented to new elections, Yushchenko emerged as the undisputed winner. On that Easter morning, there were Roman soldiers posted at Jesus' tomb to make sure that no one came and stole Jesus' body, so that the disciples would not be able to run around and say, "Hey, look everyone, an empty tomb." That must mean that Jesus has been raised from the dead. And on that Easter morning, there were also 2 women at the tomb, both named Mary, friends of Jesus who had come to the grave to say one last goodbye. Both groups, the soldiers and the women, were there at the tomb. Both saw the angel. Both experienced the earthquake. Both were filled with fear. And eventually, both of them left the tomb and went and told others what had taken place. But the difference is that while the women went out and told the truth about what had happened, namely that God had raised Jesus Christ from the grave, the soldiers went out and told a lie. The authorities instructed those soldiers to go out and lie and say, "We fell asleep on the job. We couldn't help it. We used to be air traffic controllers. No, we just fell asleep, and while we nodded off, someone came and took Jesus' body, and so there's nothing to see here. Just move along." Over the years, psychologists have made a rather disturbing finding. What they have found is that the best indicator that someone will eventually become a leader and hold a position of authority is not their intelligence, not their compassion, not their ability to plan and organize. No, the best indicator that someone will eventually become a leader and hold a position of authority is their ability to lie. For instance, in one experiment, they gave some preschoolers some Kool-Aid that had salt mixed in with it. And, of course, the Kool-Aid tasted awful. But what they did was they told the preschoolers to lie and to try to convince other people that the Kool-Aid really tasted good. And what they found was that the preschoolers who were best at lying and getting other people to believe their lies went on to become leaders in other settings. Lying takes many forms. For instance, a lot of people watch TV and they figure that what they see on TV is what life is like. It's what their life should be like. But one study found that of all the different characters that you see on TV shows, only 6% of them are depicted as having any kind of religious involvement. In other words, 15 out of every 16 people that you see on TV shows are depicted as living lives where God doesn't play any role at all. When it comes to what God has done for the world through Jesus Christ, much of the media shares in the very same lie that those Roman soldiers told. There's nothing to see here, folks. Just move along. Or consider what happened a few years ago at a school in California. At an elementary school outside of San Francisco, the principal ordered one of her teachers